toggle switch that has a video camera and a regular camera. You're gonna turn it to the video camera, right? I'm guessing you guys could have gotten that. And then this little dial on the top that has an M, an AV, a TV, a P, and an auto, and a scene, turn it to M. Okay, so that's manual. I'm just gonna turn the lights off in the classroom area because it might be easier to see the screen. And you have all those windows in the back. Okay, so there's a few places you're gonna look for stuff. The first thing you really wanna do, well, I should actually make sure I have a card in my camera, and I do. The first thing you want to do is format the card. Although the hub should format everything when you bring the stuff back, it's really a good idea to get in the habit of formatting stuff so you know that you're just starting from scratch. So if you click the menu button and you go over to that menu, the little film strip with the cog next to it, and go down to initialize and push the little joystick in, you can click memory card. This is also touch screen, so you can actually touch the buttons as well as use the joystick there, okay? So it's a good idea to do that all the time because if other stuff is on there, it's gonna take up room. You guys aren't really shooting an enormous amount when you're shooting your projects that you'd really need to have multiple cards, but it could be an issue. The other thing is if somebody happened to take the card out and put it in another device, like a sound recorder because they needed to, that device would format that card for that piece of equipment. And then when you put it back in here, it doesn't really know where to put stuff because it's not, the same file structure isn't there, okay? The other thing that you should do in here, and I forgot this yesterday, see where it says HD recording? If you click on that, you can see I have a bunch of options. 60 frames, 59.94, 59.94, a smaller transfer rates, 29.97, which is equivalent of 30 frames, and 23.98. We're gonna go to 23.98. So if it's not set that way, choose that and then get out of this menu. And then I'll go over what these things are doing. So this is the f-stop. See where it says f5.6? Does anybody know what that means? Yeah.
That's like how wide the lens is open?
Yeah, so the lens has an aperture, and it's how open or closed the aperture of the lens is. So that means how the light is getting in the camera. I'm going to show you what happens when you change that. Does anybody know what the 1/50 is?
Shutter speed.
Shutter speed, yep. What about ISO 1000?
You know, light entering the camera?
Yes, so it's the ISO, but how, do you guys know how that's different than what Carson just, that's right? Okay, good. If I call you the wrong name, don't get offended. And I promise I won't call you it for the rest of the semester, but I'm glad I got that correct. Do you know what the difference is between the two?
ISO is almost, it's fake light, so it kind of adds colors, adds sort of grainy dots.
Okay.
Create that essence of light, but it isn't actual light.
Okay.
The aperture is actually entering a large amount of, less small amount of light inside the sensor.
Okay, Terry just passed the whole class. He can just go to the next class. So yeah, he's basically right, but I would add that the ISO is changing the sensitivity of the sensor of the camera. So it's not letting more or less light in, it's just making the sensor sort of like you said, it's like fake light, sort of getting brighter or darker. And if you have that ISO up really high, instead of actually lighting your scene, exactly what you said is going to happen. You're going to get grainy digital noise. And although you might not be able to see it on the teeny screen that you're looking at to film, when you look at it like this, you'll see it, okay? And it will happen, and we'll talk about it, and then you'll do better next time. This is telling you it's manual focus. This has to do with the color temperature I'll talk about in a second. This is peaking. This is a filter that's on the camera. I'm gonna change all these things. This is where the audio, you're getting an audio signal. Why do you think we need an audio? We're not gonna use the sound we shoot today, but why do you think it's important to make sure you're recording audio? Yeah.
Matching up audio if you're using certain devices.
Yeah, so it's gonna be helpful when you're syncing to have that reference point. I teach a class where we shoot on 16mm film and Super 8 film, and that does not record sound. So if you don't have that slate that I know some of you have seen before where it claps and you can see, that's what they use to sync exactly the point where the video and the sound connect, and you don't have that slate and you don't have this, you're literally looking for people's mouths moving and figuring out what they said. It's horrible. It's horrible. Okay, so for this, we want this to be on because we're shooting the music video. We want to hear the music so that way it's going to help us sync the footage later. Okay, and then up there, 85 minutes is how much is left in the battery. 4 hours and 2 minutes is what we can put on the card. We're shooting at 2398 frame rate. The speed of the capture is at 35 megabits per second, and it's shooting in MXF files. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what happens when you change some of this stuff. All right. You can't see how the Zebra works on here, but I'll just have to tell you. So the f-stop you can change by this knob at the top. You guys can pick up the cameras and try this if you want. So see how, here's your scene, and as I close the aperture down, see how it gets darker, and the only thing we can see are the windows because that's the brightest part of what's going on. It's very dark in here, okay? If we want to change the ISO, we click on the function button up top, and we click on ISO, and here's what Terry was saying. See how if I make the ISO higher, now I can see you all again? But see how degraded the image is on the screen like that? That's what's gonna happen. So really what you need in here is light, right? Not manipulating this camera in this way. The native ISO of this camera is 500. That doesn't mean it has to be at 500. I wouldn't really go higher than 1,000 unless you really need to, because you're gonna start to get that artifacting there, okay? The shutter speed, who answered that correct? I forget. You did, Terry did? Okay, of course, Terry did. The shutter speed is how fast the shutter is moving, and that's gonna affect the motion of your scene. So we're shooting at 24 frames a second. To have natural motion, we set the shutter at 1/48 of a second for that, okay? And then this K here, if I click on this, this is the white balance. This is hard. I had the TA help the other day.
Hold on, ready? I bet I can.
Audrey's doing like 5 jobs.
you guys
on
made
that.
it
I'm
again.
gonna turn these lights on so we can see what's going on here.
There we go. Keep. I made a good.
Oh, look at that.
position.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Audrey is gonna be my card holder over here. To do that, I gotta turn the screen lights off though. All right, so if Audrey stands, so you should really do this under different lighting circumstances, not brighter or darker, but more like inside outside, right? So the sun is gonna be a different color than these lights, which is gonna be a different color than the film lights we use. Okay, so, oh God, this is horrible. Hold on. Wow, I'm gonna just bring the ISO up because it's very dark in here. So you can see what's happening some. Okay, so I'm gonna go to this. So the light bulb is saying that's just a generic setting for like indoor tungsten light. The K means Kelvin. That means you can actually set a degree of what the light is, right? But you're not gonna have any idea where to put that number. The 1 and 2, see how it looks like a little bow tie guy with a 1 and 2? Those are two things you can set. So if I go over to the 1, right? It was already set for something else. But if Audrey, can you come a little bit closer? If I zoom in to this card, right? And I click that little square with the little sliders on it. This is very hard to do and look at the screen at the same time. See how it says set? I can press that, it blinks. And then ideally, when I back up, now that's the correct white balance. It looks crappy because I have the ISO up so high just so you can see what we're doing because there's no lights in here, right? And it's telling us that the color temperature of the lights in this area is 4600. 5600 is about daylight, 3200 is about tungsten, but it's always gonna fluctuate somewhere in between. The other thing is if you have a window open and you have light inside, now you're mixing color temperature. So that's one thing and this is another. So that's a whole other ball of wax there, okay? So that's what you use the white balance card for. Thank you very much. See this 100 over here? If I click on that, and you can try it so you can see it, that's the zebra. So that shows you, like on my screen, all those windows have lines through it because that's telling me that that area is overexposed, okay? It doesn't show on the screen, but if you use it on your camera and turn it to 100 and point it towards a bright source, you should be able to see it there. Everybody see that? See that working? Okay. Now, this is a problem, right? So I'm shooting the scene. Look at how horrible those windows look, right? There's not much you can do about it because the light in here is a lot darker than the light outside. So the only thing you could really do is if we had a bunch of film lights, we could brighten the area inside to be almost as much as it is bright outside, and then your f-stop would pretty much be the same for both, and you could see all the detail out of there. If you look, if I close my iris, see how the more closed I get? Now I can see the trees, which is great, but I can't see the people, right? So normally this is not a great exposure for your shot because you want to see people's faces, not the trees. So as you can tell, if I got more light on the people, especially in the back row, then I might be able to see the trees and the people, okay? And then the other thing underneath this, see how it says peak off? If I click on that and I turn it on, you're gonna have to try this on your own too because I can't show you this on the camera, but that's focus peaking. So what that will do is it will highlight what is in focus with some type of glowing color. You can change the color on these cameras. A lot of times it's red or orange. But if you point at something and you turn your focus dial, my God, this shot is horrible. Hold on. I gotta turn my ISO up again just so you can see what's going on here. Oh, I closed the aperture. Okay, so the focus dial is the dial that's closest to the lens. So when I turn this and it's in whatever's in focus, do you see how it highlights in a color? So that's just a good way to get a second guess on something and not to trust your eye, okay? ND that's on is an ND filter, and I think on this camera you turn it off in, do you turn it off in the menu? ND filter, see? I can turn it off. ND filter is just, oh wow, look at this. So that's why everything was so dark too. Hold on. Oh, wrong way. So ND filter is just another level of taking light away from what's coming in the camera. So if it really is too bright and you can't even close your f-stop enough, you can add the ND filter. You're not going to need it today. But you will find that when you're outside, the snow is very hot, meaning it's really overexposed. So you might just want to try, and there's really nothing you're going to be able to do about it, but you might just want to try to limit the amount of space in your shot that the white stuff takes, okay? And that's what's going on here, okay? The zoom is here, and you'll notice if I have my f-stop open all the way, when you zoom, see how the f-stop closes? Because at a tighter composition, you can't actually open up the lens as much as you can from a wider composition, okay? So we'll talk more about all this stuff as the class goes on, but that's sort of enough info for you guys to start using these cameras. Now, why do you all have one? Well, oh, on the side here, you want to make sure that this is on manual focus. It probably should be. And then, like I said, this ring is on M, so that way you can make all the adjustments. We rarely just let the camera do its own thing, because it sometimes has a different idea than we have. Anyone have any questions?